Hey guys, and welcome to We Should Do This More Often with Andrea and Ashley. I'm Ashley.
And I'm Andrea. And today we're going to be hitting you with a topic that is pretty close to our heart.
So today we're talking about church hurt. We've all experienced it. So let's just go ahead and get into it. So, Andrea, let's talk about it. What are times that you've experienced church hurt? Look, this is just going to be, y'all, this is going to be real, this episode.
I remember how people made me feel as a child growing up at church, like there was something wrong with me because my parents weren't married. For me, though, a lot of my church hurt formed seeing hypocritical moments and seeing things where people would brush something under the rug or pretend like it wasn't really as bad as it was because we're faith-based people. And almost like you got a pass because you went to church and you were a Christian.
Do you think it's fair to say that humans were being placed on pedestals?
Yeah.
Because I think we do that a lot. I think instead of like looking at God as the top, we look at the pastor as the top or the leader as the top, and that's not the case, because we want to be very clear, and I want this to come across. We are wanting to approach this with some grace, because people are people, humans are humans, regardless of if we believe in God or not, and we're all going to make mistakes. However, it is a lot harder to forgive and to look past someone that should know better. So I think we do have to be careful as Christians, as people that follow Jesus, that we're not putting people on pedestals that they shouldn't be on, you know?
It's okay. That's another thing is, pastors' wives and pastors, they get a lot of judgment and a lot of fingers pointing to them because they're just expected to be perfect and they're human. And so, it is like the pedestal view of like, oh, well, you have to be. No, they're still human. We still make mistakes.
But there's a fine line, too, because of that a lot of people aren't held accountable that should be held accountable. I won't get into specifics because it wasn't me that went through it. But I remember a young girl at one of the churches that I went to in the past, none that I've ever mentioned. Her youth leader was texting her and stuff inappropriately. The mother didn't want it told because she was afraid that the church would look down on her daughter, who was 13, 14 years old. So I don't know what goes through people's minds, but when it did finally come out, he just wasn't held accountable. Like, I remember saying something to somebody that I loved and held very dear, and they didn't believe me. And I knew for a fact that it was happening. And it was every excuse in the book except, we need to protect this child and put a stop to it. It was, well, the child has made it bigger than it should have been, or, whatever excuse they want to give, or I'm sure it wasn't like that, or whatever. Yes, it was. And it ended up coming out much later.
Yeah.
And he was let go from that position as he should have been because another mother came forward. So I think it is important that we distinguish, like, yes, people are human, but some things need to be held accountable that aren't held accountable.
Well, I think you're right. I think it's about putting certain people on a pedestal. It's interesting. Like, I just think about my mom and my dad. My biological father is a pastor, but he committed adultery. He abandoned his family, but he is still held up here. When my mom was left to be a single mother with no job, no resources, a husband who just, while we were at church, packed up the house in a U-Haul and left, like, the church hurt that she experienced over that shame of it must be her fault that her husband left and abandoned her. Like, what could that person have possibly have done? It had to be her. He's a man of God, that he would leave her with these two kids. I do remember, she she did not like going to church when we were growing up, even though she thought it was very important because of the shame she felt she had to carry, and she didn't have anything to do with him leaving. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that shame, for some reason, we crucify our women, but then we put our men on a pedestal, and it's just so strange to me. I'm like you. I wish somebody would explain it to me because I don't understand it either. And maybe it's our generation.
The majority of mine came from being at that smaller church and having just so much put on me. Me seeing how people treated other people was the biggest hurt and letdown for me. These are people that I respected and that had really sewed into me since I was a young child as far as what Christianity was supposed to be, what a spiritual walk was supposed to be. And I won't get into crazy details, but I started really getting involved in a church. I was teaching the youth there. Jason and I were, along with another young lady. I was getting on committees, trying to help. Like I said, this was a smaller church, 100 people or less active. And I was just sort of, more and more kept getting put on me because I was willing to give God my yes. Y'all be careful that God's yes, it doesn't get confused with other yeses to other people, because it will very quickly. But I had just become so inundated with responsibilities and people needing my assistance, even before the church ended up falling apart. There was a toxic church culture there. They had very few employees, but the employees that they had were being mistreated, which is one of the reasons I agreed to get on their personnel committee. I was elected the chairman, first committee I ever served on, and our first order of business was to get them raises because they were living drastically, at least two of them, drastically below their means. Like, one of them in particular that was full-time, there's no way if her husband, something happened to him, she'd be able to make it. Like, I think she was making under 30 at that time, and we're talking no 1K, no health benefits, no nothing. Ridiculous, right? So that was first order of business, and like the choir director, I don't think he had a raise in like 9 years, and so it was a long road to hoe. But we did our research, we saw what other churches our size were paying, other churches, we did the research. It took an act of Congress, prayer, and almost bloodshed to get those people where they needed. And then after we got the raises approved, it was like walking into a war zone. People were so upset, even though, and this is what I'll say, y'all, the smallest, like the minority sometimes really is the loudest and will make you think, that everybody's got a problem with it, but it's really 2 or 3 people. And they like to stir crap up. Because when I tell you, like, the vote we took was like 25-3 that voted. And because, not everybody shows up for their business meetings and stuff like that. But I think it was like 25-3 voted yes. Then people that weren't at the business meeting getting mad because they didn't come to the business meeting, so they didn't get to vote. And so they're mad, and why are we paying them this? And I'm like, show up to the business meeting. Not my problem, And so it was, go ahead, Andrea.
Well, I'm going to say, I do want to conclude this because this, and I used to go here too. So the thing is, a majority of the members are living on Social Security, and that's it. Okay. So they are used to a certain amount, but they're not working.
Yeah.
These people are working, and they are trying to provide for their family. But because I get this, you should still get less than me.
Yep.
Even though you're working 40 plus hours and I'm just running my mouth 40 plus hours.
On the phone after the business meeting. Yeah.
But then I also want to say, like, Ashley, this is my perception, actually. And we've not had this discussion before, but we were friends during this time. She would call, like, do you think this is right? I mean, I called her one time. She was cleaning toilets because they said they didn't have the money to pay a janitor to come and clean the church. And so Ashley was there on an entire Sunday. And I was like, do you want me to come help you? Because she was literally cleaning the whole church herself. And it's a big church. But it's interesting because those same people end up giving her, they didn't work. They were retired and had plenty of time. Well, Ashley's working over 40 hours. Like she at one point is working a job, a full-time and a part-time job. Oh, and she's also part-time cleaning the church. And then she's leading college and career. Then she's leading you. Then she's attending every business meeting. And she doesn't even live in town. So, I mean, she's having to drive back and forth all this way.
Yep.
But they thought because she was younger and married and didn't have kids that we'll just give her all the responsibility and all the things and then complain about it when we're not willing to do for the church ourselves.
Y'all aren't even willing to show up to a meeting to vote on something.
Amen. And then you're getting mad and getting on the phone and gossiping with everybody.
Yep,
that's also
exactly
what happened. I know how it goes. I listened to my memo for years.
Knowing what I know now, I would have loved to have been at your mama's house. Knowing what I know now.
That woman knew exactly everything that was going on everywhere with everybody.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
And that's part of the reason why I don't like to be a part of gossip. Because I can't stand it. I'm like, I don't want to know. I just don't want to know.
Y'all, it was insane what we went through. But I sat in business meetings, and like their church secretary was a woman that I love and I respected, and I still respect and I still love today, that I know put her heart and soul.
It wasn't about the money.
To everything that she did, and to sit there because they didn't want to pay her more money.
Even though she deserved.
Or didn't even, they had some sort of personal vendetta against her. I'm not sure what it was. I took a day off work to be a mediator between her and the head of, the problem was, from what I can understand, and I don't want to disrespect anyone that's elderly. Yeah. I don't know that she knew what she was asking for from the secretary. She was asking, from what I and the secretary could comprehend, was like a list of line items, like everything that was purchased, how much it costs, which was strange because the budget and finance committee had to look at all the receipts, so they had to approve anything that was. And so I remember the secretary looking at her and saying, "Well, do you want this?" And her going, "No, that's not what I want. I just want." And she would just say something that tells me what all was spent. And it's like, well, no, then you are wanting a line by line item with debits and transactions and all that. And I can get that for you. But she kept saying no. So I really do think that it was a case, and a lot of those people were older and they had memory issues. Like, we would agree on things in meetings, and then the next day they forgot that we even talked about it. So that was very frustrating. That's not their fault, but it is their fault when they don't recognize that they might have an issue, and then they argue with you about it. That's just my opinion.
Like, but there were this pattern of having this issue, but just like,
I got into the habit of, there were times I had people sign stuff saying that we had discussed it, and they would still deny. They would say, no, we didn't. And I'm like, well, you signed this. There was a gentleman, so the church ended up falling apart because the staff was just mistreated. So we lost the pastor and the pastor and the choir director within a month time span of each other. So it got passed to the chairman of the deacons, who I think he was very elderly. He had a lot of health issues, and I'm pretty sure he had Alzheimer's, and had no business being the lead or head of the church, not because he wasn't a good man, but because he did not have all of his mental faculties. But he was allowed to. And it caused a lot of problems because he was very easily gotten to. The little lady over budget and finance I'm not sure what all she said to him, but suddenly he had an issue with the secretary when he had loved and adored her prior to that, and started making things harder for her. And I sat in a business meeting listening to somebody that I have loved and cared for pretty much my entire life get beaten, bruised, and thrown into the bus. And she had been treated so bad she wouldn't even show up to business meetings.
That makes me so mad because she's such a good person.
And so I had to go in sort of like in her place out of love so that she wouldn't have to go. and they would ask all these questions, and they were questions that didn't even make sense, but they would make little under the breath comments like, mark that as a strike against her, and like and it was
Well,
rough.
actually, I'm surprised you didn't go to jail and you punched somebody in the face.
There were moments.
Listen.
There were moments
Well, just know jail money.
that heads butted, and then it wasn't just her. There was another gentleman that I had grown to love. That was another deacon. He was an older gentleman, and when I tell you that man did everything around that church that I didn't do, like a lot of times we tag teamed cleaning him. He didn't have good hips. He didn't have. I'm gonna cry. He didn't have good knees. But he was climbing up on ladders, and he was doing stuff to help take care of that church. And then, if not everything was done on time, they would berate him in business meetings and ask him why something hadn't been done yet. But nobody else was lifting a finger to do anything. So I don't know if you all know this, but in Baptist churches, we have these big chairs that used to sit up on the stage or on the podium. And one was for the pastor and one was for the minister of music. And they would sit up there. The more modern churches that have made some changes, they don't really have those anymore. They have the smaller podiums, because we also used to have like this big, massive podium.
Huge.
So when the new, younger pastor had come in and was trying to help get people, save the church, because the church was losing members and all kinds of stuff. He had went down to a skinnier podium, gotten rid of the chair. So when he left and the chairman of the deacon took over, he decided he wanted his throne back up there. And I joke calling it a throne because that's what I think it looks like. So he decided he wanted those chairs back, and had that little gentleman that did all the work with the bad knees and the bad hips. It was a very big church, but it was an older church. So and it had 3 floors and 4 floors, really 4 floors if you count that back area where you went up a little bit more over the fellowship hall. So he had that gentleman drag those big old chairs by himself that were in the basement. Had him drag them up to the sanctuary and clean them so that he'd have his little throne up there. And I said, this is representative to me of what's going on here. Because instead of trying to help us figure out solutions to some of these problems, you're just wanting to sit on the throne and point and do and get your way. And that's how I felt at the time. And so a couple of weeks ago, our pastor at our new church said, we used to have these thrones, and I cackled because I got in so much trouble at the other church for calling them thrones. That is just, I think that was my biggest church hurt, is seeing people that I love just get mistreated, and knowing that it was by people that I loved and respected and that represented God to me. The important thing about church hurt is we have to realize that people are people. We have to extend grace when necessary, but also you don't have to stay where it's toxic. I mean, you're going to find problems, because churches are just buildings full of people. So you're going to find problems everywhere you go.
Yeah.
But when there's a level of toxic that is just not healthy, God didn't expect you to stay there. And I struggled with that, like for close to a year, going back and forth, going, okay, well, if we leave, who's going to teach the kids? And you know what God did? He extracted every child that was going to that church until we looked around and we were showing up on Sunday mornings to teach their Sunday school, and they weren't there because their parents had left because they knew that church wasn't going anywhere.
I'm going to give a statistic here. 63% of people who have left church say they felt judged or criticized rather than supported when going through struggles. 44% of unchurched adults say they are not involved in church because of past negative experiences with church members or leaders. So we have to have accountability for leadership. We have to have the right people in these positions of leadership, because then it just changes the whole way of things. And and a lot of people do. And Ashley, I just know that, yours was servanthood, right? Like, you were held to this different level of accountability to being a servant, when really the people who should have been servants and been in those realms of helping and doing for others, they weren't. They were more in dictating what others were doing.
Yeah, one of the ladies looking at me and going, I've seen the staff paperwork and stuff like that. And she was like, but I didn't see how much you get paid or when you get paid. And I said, I don't get paid. And the look on her face, and it made me go, people have no idea. And it's not, I would have never done it for money. But that's how involved I was. That's how much I had given myself to that church, is that people thought that I was getting paid to be there, and I wasn't. I was blessed regardless of church hurt. So this is a good time to bring in the scripture that I picked out for today, which is Psalms 147:3. He heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds. There is always something that you can find to be grateful for, and that a lot of times will help with healing. And one of the things, number one, that taught me a lot about ministry. That was my first ministry toe in the water. And it opened my eyes up to a lot of just how vicious and how just not good some aspects of ministry can be. But I also did it surrounded by people that did love me. I had a good pastor. I had an amazing choir director, and the church secretary is one of my closest friends. I was learning all these hard lessons, but I was learning them alongside people that I loved and trusted, and that had my back just as much as I had theirs. So that and grace, man, when you start thinking about how much you have hurt people, and I don't know if you all ever do that, I encourage you to do it, but you've hurt people too.
Yes.
I don't care who you are, you've hurt people. There's humility in recognizing that you've played your part, you've been a villain in someone's story, you've hurt someone before. That gives you grace for other people. But I think the bigger thing is people hurt you, God didn't. We are all striving. I know that might sound like a cop-out to some of you, but God works even in the smallest heartbreaks, and He can use it to turn something good. I was probably spending too much of my time and my efforts into that church trying to give God my yes. And so, but we needed Him to make it clear, because we didn't want to walk away and give up on something that we loved so much, and that we knew God could still salvage. But maybe it wasn't our place to be part of that redemptive story for that church.
I found this quote, Ashley. Church didn't hurt me. People hiding behind it did. So it wasn't really the church, even though this is church hurt. It's the people make the church, the people hiding behind the church.
Well, you all, that's it for this week.
I'm excited about next week, though. Are you going to tell them?
Yes, so next week, you all are not going to want to miss next week. It might be the best episode we've ever filmed, because if y'all don't know, we film these in advance. Friend of mine, Amy Sullins, is coming on next week to continue this conversation on church hurt. You all will not want to miss her story. She is incredible. You all will enjoy it probably more than you ever enjoy Andrea and I. So you do not want to miss it.
So if you have stories that you want to submit or topics that you want us to bring to the podcast, go ahead and submit your stories and questions to weshoulddothis@gmail.com, or you can message us on YouTube or Spotify or on
Instagram.
Instagram's the main one. So you can find us on.
Yeah. Instagram and TikTok. We're on all that. Y'all find us, follow us, communicate with us, have fun with us. We want to build this as a community, not just as a show that you all listen to. This is your show just as much as it is ours. So we really do want to hear from you. We want to have some of you all on. We want to hear those stories because your stories matter just as much as ours do. So until next time, guys, we love you. Bye.